and welcome back to Book Banter. Today we're talking with Kelsey Gietl, who is released, as of today, Dusk Shall Weep. This is book 2 in the Larksong Legacy series and one you definitely want to grab. If you haven't read For a Noble Purpose yet, head on out and grab both of them today. So without further ado, let's welcome Kelsey to Book Banter. Hello.
Hi, Tanya.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How is publication day going?
It's going well. Very busy. It's been so nice to see all of the posts from people in the reviews and the kind words. I'm very appreciative of all of it. Yeah.
Well, it's well deserved. It's an excellent story. So
Thank you.
It's hard to write book 2 in a series. It's very hard because you're like, well, that first one ended.
Right.
It wrapped up nicely. And then when you have to start again, I find book 2 a little daunting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the same for you.
Yeah, and especially since, your outline, you outline the series and then it never quite goes how you plan, which as an indie author, I love that I can just go where the characters want me to go. And but at the same time, yeah, you get to the end of book 1 and suddenly some sort of wrench is thrown into book 2's outline. You're like, okay, well, now I've got to figure that out. And I also have to keep the flow of the, where I was going with the original characters. So it's challenging, but I enjoy it.
And you also have to sort of fill in a little bit of backstory because people may be entering the series at book 2, or they may have read 6 books or 10 books between book 1 and book 2.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're reading book 1, book 2, book 3 all in a row. So you kind of are straddling that to make sure that all readers have the same information in the same
it's
time.
It's a fine line between giving way too much information for those people that maybe I do this a lot, where you just, when all the books are out, you start with the first one and you just kind of keep going through. And so you don't want to bog them down with exposition at the beginning, but yeah, you may have somebody that comes in the middle of it, which I've done that as well in a series.
And you're like, wait, who's who and what are they doing? Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why in this particular series, I have a cast of characters at the beginning, just with a quick blurb, not huge spoilers, but that was something that had been asked by multiple readers in my last series. So I included it this time around.
It's actually, the key characters.
Yep.
Oops, let's see if I can get it in the camera. Yeah, it is absolutely brilliant. And a nice thing that you can go back to and reference.
I do.
Story Bible, all here on the front page.
What age were they? Okay.
Yes, exactly. And little details, right? All those things. That's exciting. That's cool. You've done an exceptional job. I thoroughly enjoyed the story. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for writing that. It was, so it's the second book in the Larksong Legacy series. Can you tell us how the idea for the second story came to be?
Sure. So I'm going to try to not give, spoilers for those who have not read this one, I guess, or the first one. But so basically, the entire series takes place. It starts in South Carolina, basically, because the Lark brothers, there's 5 of them. 4 of them are traveling. 1 stays behind in South Carolina, but they are basically going from South Carolina. They head to Missouri in book 1, and then they're going to Washington Territory in book 2 in hopes of creating a better life. They were raised on a plantation, they own the plantation, and they don't agree with kind of that slave-oriented society of the South. So they've decided they're gonna take a group of supporters and head out west to create a town where everyone is welcome. And so they've brought some of their previous slaves, now free men, with them as well, who are more like family. And so book 2 continues that story of, now they're in Washington. They're trying to figure out how to build their town, which is not going well at all. One of the main elements of the book is this sort of, I'm going to say it's magical realism. A lot of people call it fantasy, but I feel like calling it fantasy leads people to think of like magic and
Yeah.
dragons or something. So it's more magical realism that the brothers have these gifts that basically are based in science, but are taken to more of an extraordinary level. So in this one, Jameson is our main character, and he's a physician, and he has the ability to, basically not heal, like he can't lay hands on people and heal them, but he has knowledge of medicinal practices that would not be around during that time. So he's able to do a lot more than the average person without really knowing how he came about that information.
Yes, that makes complete sense. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really cool actually how each brother has that skill, that talent, that's unique to themselves, and the way that you walk them through their struggles with those as well is really such, considering that it's like a superhuman thing that they have. The reality of what they have to go through day to day is so blatantly human. It's the
right. And I really wanted to show that even though they have like these skills, that is not necessarily just an immediate cure for things. Like they still have to work for stuff. It's not like in a superhero movie where, they just, come out, use their powers, and they're good to go. Like they really have to think through it, and they have to work together. They can't be an island. And I mean, they also have to have a lot of faith and trust in God to get them through these trials as well.
It makes them so human, and it makes them, it just comes across so nicely. So, yeah, you have to read it to understand probably, but it does. I love that human element of, even though something could be outside the norm, the human struggle, the human celebration, all of it, all the emotions are there. So that's pretty cool. I love that. And the characters are very distinct individuals on their own. They're very fully fleshed out with their own beliefs and their dreams and their ideas, and also their ideas about how quickly the landscape of the Washington Territory is changing. Now, Dusk Shall Weep predominantly follows Coraline Shea and her dwindling view of the world around her. What helped you shape the storyline of Coraline's degenerative eye condition and her understanding of how her life was changing?
Sure. So, and this is a little bit of a spoiler if you haven't read the first book, but not too much, I think.
Right.
Actually, it may help when you read the first book to know that Coraline has this degenerative eye condition that slowly causes her to go blind. It's hereditary, although back then they wouldn't really consider it as such. They knew that it was in the blood because her father has it. Like she says, her great uncle has it, other people, but this was still in a time where they were just starting to figure things out about genetics. And so it was more like, oh, your family, like that whole, well, it must be some sort of sin of the father type of thing.
Right.
And so she's got that she has to deal with, of like, well, why did this happen to us? And so just, I mean, in regular life, that would be so difficult. But especially when you're headed out on the westward trail, you're going to this place you've never been before. And I mean, you're very dependent on the people that you're with. And Coraline, I guess this is another spoiler, sorry.
Plug your ears if you haven't read.
Or you haven't read, just ignore this part. So she's recently been widowed as well. So one of the things that went with going west is, in order to claim the land the government was giving, you had to be male to get like the first piece of land. But then if you were married, women could also claim a piece of land.
In their husband's name.
It was in the woman's name, but she had to be married.
She had to be married.
So if you're just a single woman, you could not claim land unless you were married. So there were a lot of men and women who would get married just so they could get extra land. So Coraline was married, to a man who was he was a doctor as well. He was going to help her with her eyesight, and he died along the trail. So now she's not eligible for that land.
Right.
And her sister is also with her on the trail. So her sister is not eligible for land. So they have been kind of taken in by one of the brothers, Jameson, and he's allowing them to live on their land. But the problem is that if he would get married, or he would just get sick of them or anything, like he could say, get off my land. And as a woman, they would basically have no recourse. So, and she's going blind.
And they're in the middle of nowhere.
So she's in a pretty sticky situation here, in that she's like, okay, I've got to figure this out. So basically her goal is to trick Jameson into marrying her so that it's all legal. He can't leave her, but he doesn't know she's going blind. So, there's a lot of secrecy behind that. To get back to your original question, I've gone off track.
That's okay, because that was good background.
So when researching this, Coraline's story came about because I was actually, I had heard about this family who, I was reading an article about this family who had, and I forget the technical medical name. It's in my author notes. But basically this degenerative eye disease, their whole family had it except for like 2 of them. And there were like 5 kids in the family, I think, something like that. And so they were talking about like the younger kids trying to fulfill these goals before they went blind. And I was just like, wow, like, what if you knew this was coming? What would you do sitting there going, I'm going to go blind? Like, how would you deal with that? And then how would you deal with that out in the West as well? So that was what originally inspired me to create a blind character. And then I had also read Kate Breslin. She's an author. She writes World War I novels, but she wrote a book called Not by Sight. And in that, the main male character, he is in an explosion and he loses his eyesight. So for most of the book, he's blind. So that really inspired me to actually take this step to create a blind character, because it did seem very daunting at first. I'm like, how do you write a character? They can't see. Everything is very sensory. But she did a great job with it. So
it is a hard perspective to write from, because we're, as writers, we are very much about showing. And showing often includes, those subtleties of what we see and what we witness. So that's a huge challenge all in itself. And there's a lot of challenges, actually. You bit off a big chunk here for this novel.
I can't write. I would love to write a simplistic, like just a rom-com where, there's one story. That would be great, but
you can't write that. Yeah, no, your characters are very, very in depth, and to the point that, so like, for example, I cannot speak from an Indigenous person's perspective at all. I don't have that experience myself, but what I can say is, in Dusk Shall Weep, the relationship between some of the Larksong community and those native to the region was so deeply endearing. It's a challenge to write an inclusive story in terms of people and events throughout history without putting words in other people's mouths. How did you balance those aspects while remaining true to the fiction of the story? Because we don't want to leave anything out, but at the same time, the truth is harsh, to say the least.
Right. And it was very difficult. So in the first book, I approach slavery and African Americans and the relationships during that time, and so I kind of took the same approach to this that I took to that. I did a lot of research, and I read nonfiction books. I read a lot of firsthand accounts from both the settlers and the Native Americans, which most of the Native American accounts were written down by settlers because they just didn't have a lot of things that they wrote down. Their tradition was oral.
Yeah.
And so there was a book by James Swan. He was a settler there at the time, actually in the exact location that I'm writing about at the exact year.
Oh,
so
that's
was,
handy.
and well, it actually helped me to determine which year I was going to write in, because I found the book prior to writing book 1, and I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, it's giving me the exact year. But in his book, it was called The Northwest Territory, or sorry, The Northwest Coast, or 3 Years in Washington Territory. And he detailed all sorts of information about what the landscape looked like, how the Native Americans were, and it was primarily the Chinook tribe. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I call it Chinook, but
Chinook?
I could be wrong.
Okay. I found multiple pronunciations on different sites.
Well, I'm pretty sure that all of us are probably saying it wrong.
I apologize if it's incorrect. But their tribe had, at the time, had a very good relationship with this group of settlers who James Swan was part of the settler group. And so the two groups worked together and basically had this camaraderie, but they also remained in their independent cultures. And so they kept a lot of the same things that were unique to them. So this particular group of settlers was not forcing themselves on the natives. The natives weren't forcing themselves on the settlers, and they were all working together. And
utopia.
Right. I mean, I know they had issues, but that whole thing was very similar. That was kind of the basis of how I got the Larks goal of creating this society where everyone could work together, because that was, from my research, very atypical of settler native relations in that area at the time. But it was so interesting to learn about all the different cultures, because there were many tribes up in that area, and they had similarities, but each one had its own unique culture. And so I had to read about a lot of them before I finally decided on the Chinook.
Yeah, which one you're going to go with. Yeah, I could see that.
And they were a little more peaceful, it seemed like, than some of the other tribes. So that was another reason why I chose them. They were not involved in the Puget Sound War and the Battle for Seattle, which is the battle that is at the end of Dusk Shall Weep. That's one of the main historical features of the novel. So I kind of had to take a few liberties, but
they were around, which they probably were. They were probably around, but they may not have been a pushing force.
Yeah, they had been approached by other tribes to join, and they said no.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Yep, that makes complete sense. So, speaking of the history, then, what elements regarding the Washington Territory were based in historical fact?
Well, so I tried to base as much as I possibly could in history, especially just going back to the Native Americans again. There were a lot of elements that I tried to add just tiny things into. So, for instance, the Chinook tribe had head flattening, if you've heard of that.
Yes,
where the babies would basically, they'd like strap them to this board, and so their foreheads would be flattened. And as far as anyone could tell, it did not harm them at all. I mean, it's not something I'd recommend people go out to.
Wouldn't try
it. That was just kind of one of their cultural type of things. And
which was probably based in some story, some belief that we just don't know.
I don't know what that is, but I do know that if you did not have the flattened head, that meant that you were outside of the tribe, or like ousted from the group, or you were a slave, because they had slavery there of other Native Americans. So they would get their slaves from through war or trade, things like that. So the tribes of the Pacific Northwest, it seemed like, did not typically have white slaves. Like, they wouldn't go capture settlers, which a lot of, it seemed like, the Plains natives did. They got theirs more through other tribes.
Right.
But the slaves would not have the flattened head. And so that was one of the ways you could tell the difference between them. But things like that, burial rituals, I included their affinity for salmon. Like salmon was a very integral part of their society, and had a lot of spiritual aspects as well.
Yeah. It's interesting too. It's, the more widely I read, the more I said this, I don't know, a few episodes ago, I think, the more I come to realize that it doesn't matter what ethnicity we are, what language we speak, what religion we believe in. Humankind is just not very kind. And all have these Mars in our historical database, all the way up through to the present. And it's, I don't really think that it's as much about one group being different from another as that's this human consciousness of view. I struggle with it, of course, as I'm sure most people do, because it's not polite. It's not kind.
Right.
So it's interesting to me that when I had learned that the native tribes also had slaves of their own, I was like, oh my gosh, this is never ending. So
very interesting to read about. And I mean, that's one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize in this novel was more the similarities than the differences. And that a lot of the things they were fighting over back then were simply over people being different or misunderstandings.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that we're still fighting over now, and that it's just completely unnecessary. And so like the tribes and the settlers were able, when they came together as a community, they were able to get along and realize, okay, we have different religions, we have different cultures, but at our heart, we're the same.
Yeah.
So there's no reason that we can't get along.
It boggles my mind. We are very slow learners, apparently, because that's exactly it. It's such a fascinating aspect, and sad as well. It is sad. So, and I thought this was interesting too, how you touch on Coraline's presence and this is sort of bringing it through to what was and what is today acceptable. And sometimes when we write historical fiction, we are writing in the era that the story is set in. So Coraline's presence among the men, both the tribal and the Larksong members, would have been virtually unheard of back then in the 1850s. So it doesn't always jive with today's sensibility. So I thought you might want to discuss how women might have actually been involved in the community in the mid 1850s, because it was an anomaly because I won't give a spoiler.
There's a very particular scene that you're referring to, and I know what you're referring to. And in that instance, yes. And I do put this in my historical notes as well, that for that particular area, that was still very much a man's world back then. And I feel like it's a man's world now, which we can go into feelings on that at another time. But so back then, outside of kind of politics and war, women in the West did have a different way of interacting with men than women in the East, typically.
Oh, interesting.
They were much more involved in their communities, both in the natives and in the settlers. So like out back East, I would think most people are familiar with, your standard women are, more the wallflowers, and they do what the men tell them to do. And they needed to get married, and which I guess in this case they still needed to get married.
To have
they had more say in things simply out of necessity, because in order to create your claim and raise a town, I mean, men could not do it on their own. They needed the women and the children once they got old enough as well. So women were very involved in all the aspects of their claim. They would help their husbands in the fields, and as well as taking care of the children and going into town. And when you're setting up your town, like if it was just as the Larks are, just 3 or 4 groups, I mean, everyone had to pitch in and take care of things, because otherwise your town would fail.
Absolutely.
So it couldn't be like back east. If the men were like, woman, sit here and don't help me.
It's not a lot of front porch sitting.
You're going to be headed back east pretty soon, because you're going to fail.
Right.
With the native tribes also, and there's just such a great diversity between like the Pacific Northwest tribes, the Plains tribes, the Eastern tribes. Like, so I'm not even going to try to go into all of that, but from everything I read, like with the Chinook, they the women were very involved in their society and worked alongside the men. They learned how to canoe and swim and fish and do all of those things, but they also had division of responsibilities as well. So like the men would primarily fish, they would bring it home, the women would prepare it, they would make like the fish oil and things for the winter. The women were in the traditional role of taking care of the children, taking care of the house, whereas the men would go off to war. They would go off to like the tribal councils to negotiate different things. So at this time, there were several consuls where Governor Stevens, who was in charge of that area from the American government, and the natives were getting together, and they were talking about like reservations, and basically the government was asking them to give up their land and offering them things that they had no intention of giving them. And it was very sad. And so the men would be the ones that would go to those consuls, and while they were gone, the women would stay home, take care of the children, kind of get things ready for the men to return. But there was, from my opinion of doing my research, it seems like the Pacific Northwest tribes were more in union, like men and women were more in union than some of the other areas. But war and politics were still mostly the men.
Interesting. So that West Coast vibe was happening way back when. Just the slower pace of life, apparently. Interesting. And I guess it's part of me wonders how negotiations and whatnot would have been different if the women were allowed to be a part of it.
That's a great question.
Right? Like, wouldn't you, like the intuition alone of, the reading the room, the reading of, the body language.
Well, and another issue that they had was that the natives were given an interpreter. So there was a language called the jargon that they had. And it was kind of a mix of the Chinook, English, and French. And so that was like the trade language that people used between the natives and the white settlers. But a lot of people didn't know it very well. And so
hard to believe why.
Right. The government gave an interpreter for these tribal consuls. But the problem was also that, so you have different tribes, and each one speaks their own language, and each one speaks the jargon a little bit differently, and you have one interpreter. So they weren't necessarily interpreting everything correctly. People weren't understanding, and that was how a lot of the natives ended up losing so much land and so many things.
Because the interpretation wasn't apples to apples.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure that was used to the advantage of some.
Now, one thing I did find really interesting, not to get off topic, but the Maka tribe, again, I think that's how you say it. They're like way up, Makah.
Okay. I don't think I've heard that one.
Okay. They're like up in the like peninsula off of the west coast of Washington.
Oh, okay.
And their tribe asked specifically in their negotiations, I think they were I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think they were one of the first to say, okay, we're willing to go on this reservation on our land, but we want to maintain rights to whaling, to
Wow.
hunt the whales. And basically they wanted indefinite rights. So I looked it up and they still have those
You
rights
still have
today.
it.
They're like the only ones that are allowed to whale.
Interesting.
Mhm.
That is interesting because there are, I know with fishing, not big
Yeah.
whaling, but fishing and that there are still rights in place. But whaling,
Yes.
that was
They're like the
there
only ones that
because everybody else probably went, yeah, whaling, that's hard.
uh,
That's not an easy.
that was one of the rabbit holes I fell down while researching. Was I started
I
reading about
bet.
like how to go whaling and like what they did when they brought the whale in and how they cut it up, and none of
It
that's
is,
in my book. So if you're
no.
interested in that, I don't know, read Moby Dick.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, even though I don't have it in there.
It is interesting. And it is because they use every single part
Hmm.
of everything, which I think is just like
I have
brilliant.
salmon and oysters in there, but I don't have whales.
Yes. No, no, and there would have been a lot of whales
Hmm.
through that stretch of land there, or water, I mean. There would have been
Probably
that,
way more than
yeah.
today. Like just thinking about some of the like how things would have looked differently, like the
Mhm.
landscape, which is why I was glad to have that book
Yeah.
because like there were no cities.
No.
Seattle was like a postage stamp.
Yep.
Um, it would have just looked so different.
Well, in Seattle and Tacoma were from early on, we're battling out for who was going to be the city,
Mhm.
right? Who was going to be the capital. And so I think how it went, if my research brain is remembering correctly, is Tacoma got the train station, which they thought that that would guarantee them the capital.
Mhm.
But Olympia actually is the capital.
Right,
So there was always this positioning politically between
right. And Seattle
between
got the ships.
they got the yeah, they got the ports
Yeah,
and stuff. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah. So it's yeah, but Seattle's also built on a whole lot of
It's on marshland.
so it's not really sturdy.
It's the same thing. So in my next book is in San Francisco, and it's the same
Ah,
sort of thing where like all these ships came into San Francisco for the gold rush, and then they just abandoned them there, and so they sunk a lot of them, and like half of like the San Francisco by the harbor right there is all built on like basically like a trash heap over the
yes.
harbor.
Yeah, that's the same as
Yeah.
Seattle. Yeah,
Um,
Seattle's waterfront.
okay.
Because they also had to regrade. So they had huge hills in Seattle, and so they took them all down, and it was a big deal. But yeah, and just dump it all, create land, build stuff on top of it.
Mhm.
I'm sure we've been doing
Sure,
that
that
for
won't
a
be a
while.
problem ever.
Not ever, not an earthquake country, not ever. It is quite funny. Uh, until it's not, I guess. I actually really loved how you incorporated the names and the stories that were true to the Chinook people. Um, and as like any story, the gift is in speaking it so that you can keep it alive. Would you do us the honor of retelling us the Chinook story about the sea monster destroying the earth?
Sure. And yes, as you said, all of the Native American names in my book are real Native American names that were used during that time. I got them all from that 3 years in the Northwest Territory book. They are the stories of the people, like how the characters act, are not necessarily like
Right.
real people. I just used the names so that I knew they were accurate.
Yeah,
Um,
authentic
is
and
it right?
beautiful.
It's another language, so I didn't want to make up names
Yes.
that meant something
Right? Yeah.
inappropriate. Um,
Yeah, because you never know, right? When you don't
right.
know the language. Yeah. Yeah, they're beautiful names. Yeah.
Mhm. But the so the story of the sea serpent that I talked about. So just to give some background on this, and this is where so the brothers and they have their gifts, and they talk about how there was a shipwreck up in the Pacific Northwest in 1700, and that's where like whatever happened during that shipwreck is what gave the families their gifts. And so I got that idea from the Cascadian Fault line that's up there. And that was the last time that it went off. So 1700, there was this massive earthquake, which caused a massive tsunami that went all the way to Japan and also went like wiped out a whole bunch of that area right there, Washington, Oregon. And so there were a lot of native tribes there. And basically, anyone that did not get up into the mountains was wiped out. So there's one tribe, Ozette. I have it in my notes.
In the book?
It's in the historical notes.
Okay.
But they were covered by a mudslide. And so they're excavating in 1970s. They started excavating this, and it's like really well preserved under there of these lodges and everything. And they're still excavating it now, but that was caused due to the tsunami. And so basically one of the ways that, and this is true of mythology throughout history, one of the ways that the natives explained this was it was the spirits, because for them, everything on the earth has a spirit to it.
Yes.
And so they're one with the spirits, respecting the spirits. And so for them, this whole fault line issue, because in 1700 they didn't know what that was.
No.
Was caused by a sea serpent that became angered and basically came out. So the earthquake would be coming out of the ocean, like through the ocean. And the tidal wave was the sea serpent coming down on the land in its fury, because somehow they had angered those spirits and basically wiping everyone out. And so I took that story and I expanded on it for purposes of my story and turned it into one of the ancestors. I'm not going to go into whose ancestor or anything, but basically one of the ancestors, it becomes pregnant by totally normal means, but it occurs at the same time as the tidal wave and everything, the tsunami. And so they are blaming the sea serpent and saying, oh, like you've been impregnated by the sea serpent. And so she then kind of becomes ostracized. And so her child is no longer allowed to have the flattened brow.
Oh, yeah.
So part of it is her descendants trying to regain honor for their family.
That's right. I forgot that part. That's right. And Ozette was right. Interesting. It is fascinating. It really is. And I assume that you already said how the book, the title of the book, it had two titles. What was it again? The 3 years in...
Oh, it was the Northwest Coast or 3 years in Washington Territory.
Okay.
And James Gilchrist Swan.
Okay. And that was your number one source for inspiration and research.
It's very detailed. So if you want to learn a lot about 1853 in Washington Territory, I would highly recommend that book.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's free online.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, 1853, I guess, you know. Copyright has run out on that one. So what would you like readers to take away from Dusk Shall Weep?
So I think really just, again, that we're all human and we're all very similar and go through the same types of experiences. One of the biggest issues that all the characters in the book has is being afraid to open up to people that they're close to because of fear of rejection. And the whole time they feel like what I'm going through, no one will understand. I'm completely alone, when really no one is completely alone. And I think that that's like a big deal in society today. Mental health is like issues are running rampant. And that's a big thread throughout this book is mental health, depression, anxiety, and the fact that people you don't think have it, like you would have never guessed. And there's one character in this book that I've heard from multiple people, and I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, that when it's revealed that he's got mental health things going on, they're like, I would have never guessed. So
That's good though. What a good parallel.
Yeah. So I just want people to know that they're not alone. They can talk to people, that it's our similarities that bring us together rather than our differences. And that's what we need to focus on.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Absolutely. So you briefly mentioned San Francisco. What can we look forward to next? What are you working on?
So my next book is Sparks Fly Upward.
I love that title.
It's book 3 in the Larksong Legacy series. And I'm not going to tell you who the main characters are because you'll find out at the end of book 2, and I don't want to ruin anything. But basically, yeah, so it takes place in San Francisco, 1858 time frame. So it's a few years after book 2, which ends in 1856. Okay. And it's very much the dark side of San Francisco. Like, so at this time, the gold rush is kind of winding down and things are starting to get better overall for the city of San Francisco. It's not quite as just Wild West as it was. Like, families are moving in, like things are getting better. They've got police. But there's this circus that is where this is going to take place. And the circus, I'm calling it kind of a mix of From the Outside. It's The Greatest Showman. Families can come. Oh, yes. It's great. It looks wonderful, very well maintained. But behind the scenes, it's kind of like Moulin Rouge.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, that's good.
There's some not good things going on there. And we're also going to find out more about the background of the gifted and kind of where the other families are, because there's supposed to be 7 families that are gifted, and the Lark's father has told them that they're all dead, but they don't necessarily believe that. And so we're going to find out what happens to the rest of them.
That's cool. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. When do we have an ETA on that? No pressure.
My goal is like April of next year, but we'll see how it goes. Because that's kind of how, like, the last several books that I've put out, that's about the time frame that they've been going.
That makes sense.
So we'll see. I've got it almost completely outlined and have started drafting.
You have. Okay. So okay, because we should say Kelsey also works a full-time job, has a young family.
I'm off work today.
Yes, she's off work today. Has a family, does cover design, and edits and stuff for other people. So she's a busy, busy girl. It's amazing that we actually have you on here to chat.
It's how I stay sane. I just stay busy.
Stay busy, yes. And if there is any indie authors out there looking for cover design, pop over to Kelsey's website as well. She does beautiful covers and she designs her own as well.
Yes. Thank you. I would love to work with anybody. So
they're beautiful. I actually just peeked at them before we hopped on.
I have a few more that I'm not allowed to share yet, and I'm very excited for these authors' books. But yeah, I can't share them until they share them.
Yeah, so. Yeah, exactly. So the last question I have for you is, what are you reading now?
So currently, I'm going to say 2 things. One, I've been reading a lot of like cheesy rom-coms lately.
Something lighthearted.
Like those Christmas movies. They're kind of like that. But that's also because book 3 in my series is darker than, it's still clean. Let's just say that, but it's it's just heavier
The
than
tone.
the other
Yeah.
ones. So I've been reading a lot of
That makes
fluffy
sense. You've got to
books.
balance it out, right?
But I'm also reading your book right now. I'm
Oh,
reading
right. Yeah.
I'm beta reading. So that is going very well. I'm
Oh,
enjoying
good.
it.
Good to know.
Mhm. I would say so far I'm liking it more than the first one.
Oh, really? Interesting. Interesting. Huh. Interesting. Okay. We've had a few um, really positive comments so far about it. So I am pleased with that because it was not an easy labor.
Okay.
It did not want to be easy at all. So, but that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah. So far
But-
I'm enjoying it. So I'm interested to see what happens.
That's a good thing.
Mhm.
That's a good thing. I'm interested to hear your feedback because it always makes it better. So this is publication day today for Dusk Shall Weep.
Mhm.
I hope it goes really, really well and you get to
Thank you.
celebrate with your family tonight. It's a beautiful book. It really is. It's not just the cover, but the story is a very beautiful, touching story. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
Thanks
Appreciate
for joining us. It's always great to chat with you. So until next time, friends, grab a new book.
All right.
And settle in for a good read. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you.